Started. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our crisis intervention and de-escalation training. I am Amber Freeman. I am the Director of Training, Technical Assistance, and Community Impact at the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. Today, we have a training that is probably one of the topics that was requested the most, really, by our providers throughout the state, and that is crisis intervention and de-escalation. Really was looking for someone that could provide this training that comes from a lot of experience, hands-on experience that can really speak to our sector and really be able to give us some great tools. And that person that I found is Evan Serio, who is the program manager of Desk, Downtown Evening Soup Kitchen. If you attended our annual training institute, Evan was also a participant in our harm reduction workshop. So Evan really came very highly recommended, and he has prepared a very interactive training for you all. If you are able to, can you please turn on your camera? We do want everyone to engage and participate as much as possible. That's the only way to truly be able to learn these skills. So this is being recorded. We do have the slides will be available for you. The recording will be available for you. And there's also some handouts that will be available for you. And at this point, I am going to hand it over to Evan. The chat is accessible. At any point, if you have any questions, please feel free to interject. We want as much interaction as possible. Evan, I'm handing it over to you.
Thanks so much, and good morning, everyone. As Amber said, my name is Evan Serio. I work at Downtown Eating Soup Kitchen for the last long enough that I have to do the math. So I believe I'm going on 6 years, and I'm delighted to be with you all this morning. As we have a huge crew today, I think probably the easiest way to interact is I have the chat open. I'm going to be monitoring it. Feel free to drop in all of your comments and whatnot. It might help with the connection issues to have the chat the way that we are kind of responding back and forth. I'll bring those in. And Amber, if you don't mind helping me monitor that if I get lost down a rabbit hole. So thank you all for joining. I'm going to pull this up. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Excellent. I can also see the thumbs up, all of the emojis. So please feel free to engage however works best for you all. So as I said, I am from Downtown Evening Soup Kitchen. Just over 2 years ago, we opened New Haven's lowest barrier drop-in and resource center for people experiencing homelessness. We have done now 2 years of warming center as well. And what this means is that we are very harm reduction minded. We are very client centered, and we attempt to embody a trauma informed and responsive approach. And our low barrier approach to this work means that we end up working with the majority of clients who have been have not found a working home in other programs. And so we end up dealing with a lot of behavioral and substance use issues. We have a lot of clients who have difficulty engaging with services that require a large level of their own engagement to begin with. And so we attempt to really meet them where they're at in the harm reduction mindset, and kind of help them get to where they want to be in their lives, where they are kind of, they're doing the steering. And what that means is that we've learned some lessons that hopefully if you all have not hit these in the past, that we can kind of share some of these lessons learned and all move forward together. And I'm under the impression that most of the folks joining us today are shelter providers. Is that correct, Amber?
We have a good mix. I think it's shelter
Excellent.
providers. We have other providers from just the community. So I think it's a good mix.
Beautiful. So a lot of this is tailored to a very broad understanding. And later, when we're able to kind of engage more one-on-one and have the breakout rooms, some of the prompts are kind of focused more towards a congregate setting. But I do encourage folks to kind of make it what will work best for you all. And just as a kind of a benchmark, through our warming center last winter season, we had almost 700 clients, and so you can kind of gauge for a 45-person room how frequently we were being used. Our door was open all night, and since January 1 of this year, we've had over 11,000 clients come through our doors. So we're a very small organization, but we do see a very high turnover and a very high client utilization. So just to outline real quick what I'm hoping to go over today, I'd like to discuss some basic techniques for dealing with complex client encounters and incidents. What does a crisis look like? How do we, what do we want to keep in mind during that time? What are some really basic kind of de-escalation 101? But if you're anything like me, I need to build a bridge between what I already know and what I'm learning now, and kind of take it beyond that step one and connect those theories with practice and with what I already know in order to move forward and kind of integrate that into my own understanding of my day-to-day. I'd like to very much promote some self-awareness. There's a little bit of a take-home exercise if folks would like to use it later. And I'd like to touch upon just briefly some agency and systems level considerations, just in case folks would like to bring back to your coworkers, to your supervisors. If you are supervisors yourself, things to keep in mind to support staff before, during, and after an incident, and kind of putting in place policies and procedures that will support both the staff and the clients. And then hopefully we'll be able to dig in for about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, to some practice for today. Seems like a good place to start off is defining what exactly de-escalation is. Thousand Waves Martial Arts Center out of Chicago has a pretty good definition that we've used in our trainings to say that this is an assertive communication skill. I think that it's key to say that it is assertive. As staff members, we are our role in de-escalation is to take charge of the situation, to calm someone down, whether they're agitated, angry, or temporarily out of control, and really to take charge of the situation and not necessarily the people. I also really like the fact that this definition deals with the kind of time continuum that we're dealing with. Folks are coming to us in crisis all the time with past hurt. They have a present crisis and they want to be moving towards a future in which they are able to navigate that safely for everyone and moving towards their own goals. And this really means that we want to find that sweet spot in incidents where we are able to interject, we are able to de-escalate a situation, because we all know that there are very clearly incidents where we are past words, and the response is simply to focus on safety, right? Those kinds of incidents where you have crossed the Rubicon and we are now in a situation that is dire, we can all kind of feel those in our gut. Different agencies have different policies about where that line is, And we won't necessarily be dealing with those today. We're really going to be focusing on those instances where we can, with assertive communication, de-escalate a situation from reaching that point before we reach violence, right? So the goals of de-escalation then are really to speak truly to that person and their feelings, because that is quite frequently where these incidents pop off from, is invalidated feelings and the need to make sure that folks are listening to you by kind of blowing up, right? And when I say validate feelings, I wanna note that feelings are always valid. What we do with them is not always, right? I can feel hurt. It doesn't mean that I need to swing at somebody. It doesn't mean that I need to start calling names if I feel like I am not being heard. We really do want to calm the situation and address that hurt. And frequently, this only really takes a kind and patient ear. In homeless services, quite frequently, I'm sure you all know this, folks have felt dehumanized, belittled, marginalized in so many different ways that sometimes it really just takes letting someone vent and making sure that everyone does really feel heard. Even if the situation doesn't end up going their way, we can walk away with some understanding that us as service providers truly believe that their feelings were valid, and we can move forward to a place where everybody's needs can get met. Finding those core issues is quite important. Where this hurt that will end up being, blown out of proportion or be moved towards the threat of violence or to a place where someone's safety might be in question, really does tend to come from some feeling of injustice towards that individual, right? And if we can really get at that core issue, then we can start to manage the situation. And I would like to be very clear. I don't think that it is super useful to be thinking about de-escalating a person. I think that personally, I have found in my practice, it is most useful to de-escalate a situation, and a person will de-escalate themselves. If you give somebody the space and the humanizing respect to vent what they have to say, if they are willing to work with you, they will vent themselves out. If someone is beyond that, we can only do what we can do. And then always maintaining clear communication. And this includes explaining consequences and responsibilities, both consequences for us as staff people and our responsibilities, but the responsibility of the individual to maintain their safety and the safety of their folks around them. So we have our client going over the waterfall. I've had a couple folks ask me what that graphic is. So what is a crisis? I think that this is a pretty decent definition to work from, seeing as this has kind of 5 elements that are useful in talking about many different types of conflict, whether that be client on client, client on staff, if someone comes in with suicidal ideation, substance use issues, mental health crises of all kinds, because it really hits on, we have a difficult situation. We have difficult emotions, and it may cause difficulty for your workflow, right? This has completely interrupted your day, other clients' days, and certainly the person who is in crisis. Trouble has been caused. Either someone or something has caused a disruption to the program and others. And danger could be unfolding. It could be imminent. It could be just the threat of. And this could manifest as a physical danger, an emotional one, a psychological one, or some other manifestation, right? Someone is in crisis, and we don't necessarily need to feel unsafe for someone to feel unsafe in themselves. I also appreciate that it hits upon the fact that these situations are intense. They can be, heart pounding. Everyone around them will feel this to some degree. including you and your coworkers, which is why I want to touch upon some of these agency level considerations as well today. And then time. The key here is to kind of deflate, decompress, and obviously de-escalate and keep that crisis window very short so that folks can go back to self-regulation. And this doesn't have to define the rest of their day, their week, their life, right? Some other words that might come to mind, and feel free to chime in the chat. But some words that come to mind with when we speak about crisis to me include safety, one of the major considerations, both for staff and for other clients and that individual in particular. Stability, trust as a way to build a bridge out of these situations. And then teamwork, particularly among yourself and your coworkers and your supervisors. If anyone has any other thoughts, I'd love to hear them in the chat. So I'm sure everyone here has heard of fight, flight, or freeze. I believe a lot of this material is not going to come new to folks. But I do just want to kind of touch on what happens within our brains in a crisis situation. Our brain's full-time job is to keep us alive, right? Where it's monitoring for threats all of the time. A healthy response is that we see a threat, we make a split-second decision on the level of our central nervous system, and then we act immediately. Someone comes around the corner too quickly, we jump, right? That is our flight reaction. We act immediately, and in a healthy response, we're able to calm ourselves down later. Our central nervous system can return to a baseline, and we can reset, right? We are always looking for the bear in a situation. We have evolved that way. With fight, and we believe that if we fight the bear, our central nervous system, our limbic system just says, if you fight the bear, we can defend ourselves. We'll be okay. The flight mechanism says that if I flee the bear, I'll survive. And that bear can be emotional, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical bear. If I freeze, will the bear not see me? Kind of newer research has also said that fawning is a way to deal with the bear. If I make the bear like me, the bear won't want to eat me, right? And then flop is a way to discuss the mechanism that possums tend to use, right? With playing dead, or if anybody's seen the goats that freeze and they fall over, fainting or a complete emotional shutdown is also a response. These are hardwired into our central nervous system. They're part of the limbic system, which is the hypothalamus, amygdala, thalamus, and hippocampus. That is the set of parts of our brain which process stimuli before it can ever get to the thinking part of our brain. So we process feelings first. And I think that's really important to understand when we're talking about de-escalating a situation, because we are first and foremost going to be dealing with a person's emotions before we can deal with their rationality, right? And if we're stuck in that feelings area, then we really need to address them, which is why I'll continue to say validate feelings, really speak to those. And I think particularly for folks working with the population of people experiencing homelessness, who use drugs, or experiencing all kinds of marginalized identities, if we are not as humans able to reset back to that healthy baseline with a good diet, enough sleep, enough space between threats, if we are not able to reset to that healthy baseline, we are constantly going to be on the lookout for bears. And if you keep looking for bears, you're going to find them everywhere. especially when that is validated by a lack of safety or stability in your everyday life, which shifts your baseline from calm with a emergency response that is outsized to an outsized baseline where anything could set you off. And for us as service providers, I think it's important to also mention that our work is spent rushing from fire to fire, from crisis to crisis, trying to put that out, right? Our folks, our clients live in crisis, which means that we are perpetually and procedurally surrounded by crisis. If we don't learn from each one of those fires, if we don't learn from each one of those crises, we ourselves will continue to kind of spiral in these same ways, and our baselines can shift. And so as we're thinking about crisis de-escalation, I think it's also important to think about how to learn from each one of those situations. If you're seeing something new, maybe we have to take a deeper dive into our procedures. If we're seeing that our staff are becoming burnt out, maybe we need to take a look at our HR policies. If folks aren't using their PTO, maybe we need to look at how we can deepen our bench for hired staff in order to make sure that folks don't feel like they have to be there all of the time in order to keep our folks out of crisis, right? Because the burnout is real. I'm sure I don't have to convince you all of this. And the only way that we can truly, and I have to repeat this mantra myself, the only way that we can truly help others is if we first help ourselves. So I'm a very visual thinker. I hope some of this ends up helping you all, but some things to think about within an interpersonal crisis. I know that this can manifest in many different ways, especially the more folks that you add to this kind of diagram. But as I said, you have a lot going on, and we have to simultaneously be steeped in the moment and also thinking broader than that. We have to have a micro lens and also a macro lens. What happened before? Do I trust everyone's word on exactly how we got here? What do I have to do afterwards? Where is my coworker? Am I going to completely miss my lunch break, right? Our heads are constantly on a swivel, and we have to be constantly thinking about the entire environment of this situation. We have to think in terms of chess and not checkers. Some helpful things to consider about all of these moving pieces are that over here on the right-hand side, we kind of have the client with the dark green backpack over here. They're going to be coming to these situations with both their personal histories of trauma and conflict, but also their histories with the other individual involved. And we all know that it is the springtime, and if you are in a location where the winter bed count is low, everybody is sick of one another already, and there are beefs, there are situations that we might not know the whole of until they pop off. And so this personal history that folks are approaching us with also has to do with their personal history with service providers of all sorts. I work at a soup kitchen. If someone has had a bad experience with a soup kitchen ever, I am the face of that bad experience. And that is just something that I have to consider when I walk into every single situation. If somebody has had bad experiences with shelter, they're going to be bringing that history with them. And we just have to be mindful of that, not take that emotional burden on, but really be able to speak to that at some point. It also has to do with their triggers, their expertise, their other kinds of identities as well. And their current state. We're getting just a little bit of feedback here. How well are their needs being met today? Are they running on empty? Do they have energy? Are they well slept? Have they, if they're on medications, have they been able to secure those and whatnot? Were they in a good mood? Did somebody just slight them on their way in? Or, as we frequently experience, someone was mugged and now they don't have any of the documents for the appointment that they are walking into with you today. It also kind of moving up this little diagram. It also has to do with word choice, tone, what language is being used, the kind of speed and pace at which they're talking. Are they speaking a million miles a minute? Are they speaking very slowly and quietly? Are they yelling? And this kind of gets filtered through our personal biases, our understanding of the world, what are our morals and our ethics. And I put down hearing ability, but really this kind of goes through a filter of our abilities as a whole, right? If I'm unable to stand and we're having a conversation for very long periods of time and we're having a conversation on concrete, I'm going to have a lot less emotional space to hear that I need to change my behavior. And so kind of keeping in mind how to make folks, to approach folks and meet them where they're at and where their needs are. Also has to do with, the environment at large. Is it loud? Is it crowded? Is it public? Are folks going to be acting different if they think that they are on a stage? If they feel embarrassed about what they just did? Frequently, we can think about maybe moving to a slightly less public space in order to have the conversation. Yeah, you just messed up. We really need to talk about your behavior. And then most de-escalation trainings, if anyone else has been has sat in on these, they really tend to focus right here in the middle. And I like to expand it a little bit, but this is very important, right? Our body language, how does that look? Are you engaged? Are they only speaking to you? Are they refusing to speak to the staff members and they're continuing to speak with the other person that they're having the issue with? How far away are we standing from one another? Are we standing too close? Are we in each other's bubble? Are they coming too close to us? Do we need to address that? Are they maintaining very intense eye contact? Are they avoiding eye contact? Do they look comfortable? Do they look calm? Do they look like they're in pain? All things to be keeping in mind. And also, unfortunately, time, keeping in mind kind of that broader picture. On the kind of the other side of this, with the purple backpack, is maybe our service provider, right? This is us. I think it also important that we examine our own histories, our experiences, our trauma, our triggers, and because we carry those into every moment of our life, which means that we also carry it into that that crisis situation, right? And I think that we need to have a heightened sense of self-awareness in order to truly meet folks where they're at and address these myriad and complex situations. And I've taken, so many de-escalation trainings that specifically say, and we'll go over some basics in a minute, but they specifically say, maintain constant eye contact, make sure your hands are open and at your sides, that you stand exactly at a 45-degree angle and smile and speak quietly. And what this looks like is, to me, that I do not look approachable. I look like I might need to be de-escalated. If I'm smiling and keeping very intense eye contact and standing with my hands open at my sides. And I say this specifically to bring up that we're all intelligent, caring folks who clearly have been drawn to this field. I absolutely welcome and encourage folks to develop that gut feeling to be able to read situations to bring the most approachable and also authoritative as necessary embodiment of yourself and your role to the situation, which is why I will not list out all that many kind of tenets that I think that you need to do in every situation, because the situation is going to be different. The way that you relate to your clients is going to be different. If I come to work and I try to de-escalate if I'm wearing a suit and tie, I'm not very approachable. If I come and I am wearing what I normally do, if I am speaking the way that I normally do to our folks, which may be a little more crass than in a training, I am more approachable, which means that I am more accessible as an ally to help de-escalate the situation for the clients involved. What I will say is that I have found that mirroring and modeling is the way to truly match somebody's energy, and then also model where you would like to bring it down to have a more rational conversation about consequences, responsibilities, and ramifications of someone's actions, right? If I use that model of standing very straight and smiling and maintaining eye contact and keeping my hands at my sides with my arms on my sides with my hands open, and somebody is telling me about how they are feeling unsafe in themselves and the way that they are thinking about hurting themselves, I'm not going to be an effective ally to that individual for that crisis. Now, if it's a loud room and somebody feels like they're not being heard, I can do the complete opposite. I can cross my arms, I can lean in, and I can show them that despite this entire chaos around us, I am entirely with them in that moment. And so I just try not to put out too many rules of don't do this, don't do that. What I will say is that the bottom line is to validate folks' feelings and then to identify and remove the bear. If I'm going to keep going back to our limbic system explanation, find what the bear is for that individual, and as much as possible, remove the bear or remove the individual. Different, floor plans, different layouts, different programs. You all have an understanding of what area you operate in. Maybe that means that if there is a question of safety, you don't pull somebody aside entirely privately into a separate room. Maybe this just means that you ask your coworker to move the crowd away, right? Maybe this means that you all step outside so that you can have, even though it's more in the public, it is out of the way of the rest of the program, and you can have a more private conversation despite being on the sidewalk. So to try to get down to some of those, like I said, the loose rules, I will say. As I said, match and model. I think that matching someone's body language and then modeling how you would like them to modify it is useful. Now, if someone is jumping up and down, and I would very much like to sit down and have a conversation with them about how their behavior is not conducive to everybody feeling safe in the space, I can't just immediately sit down, right? Maybe it means that we're going to pace back and forth for a minute so that we can get rid of some of that nervous energy, and then kind of model that I would like to sit down and have a concerted conversation, right? It doesn't mean that I'm going to go right from where they are to where I would like to be. It means that we're going to have to kind of meet them where they're at and then model how we're gonna move there. Avoid pointing. This is a very again, this is very like hardwired. I don't understand exactly why, but there's a reason why politicians will point with their thumb. I think that open hands and tend to be a lot less accusatory. Likewise, be very careful using touch. I know that's for a lot of our folks, a lot of us in this room might feel very seen and comforted or cared for with touch. But again, we need to keep in mind that we do not know folks' histories, their triggers, and those all might change in a moment of crisis. And so terms of endearment, you will never hear me with my identity calling someone honey or dear. That will escalate the situation further. However, some of my supervisees, that is a really easy way for them to say, I care about you. I might not remember your name right now, but I really care about you. And I want you to know in every single one of my interactions, right? That might also shift and feel a lot like, a lot different and patronizing or something of the kind during a crisis situation. Again, I'm going to keep focusing on listen to your gut and develop that gut feeling about how we relate to individuals, and that also has to do with asking about their needs not only during the crisis, but just getting to know your clients in general. But I really do think that quite frequently, if our folks are having an outsized emotional reaction, it could very well be that nobody asked them, what do you need? What do you want? What are you looking to get out of this situation? And how can I help maybe get you somewhere closer to that? When we have to say no, it's that's a very difficult thing to hear for any of us. And I think that no, but I can't do that. But you know what we could do? Why don't we do this? Does that sound okay? Giving options is useful. However, when we are stuck in that feelings part of our processing brain, too many options can be difficult to process. And so keeping things to 1, 2, or 3 options is helpful. No, I don't have, I might be coming back to quite a few soup kitchen based examples, but no, I'm sorry, we don't have that treat that you were looking at. We just ran out. But you know what I do have? Being able to validate that someone feels slighted. However, I have something that you might actually really like, means that I am also looking to fulfill their needs, and I want to make them feel a little bit special. Minimizing distractions is important. I think that this is really important part of teamwork as well. If we have a client who is experiencing some kind of behavioral crisis in the space, the staff person who is directly engaging with them is now the point person for that crisis, and the other staff member's key role, until they're told otherwise by the point person, is to mitigate the ramifications for the crowd and to keep others from getting involved, right? It's crowd control time. And sometimes that means, encouraging folks to step outside and have a conversation or step into a more private area. The more distractions that are available, the more possible bears that are in the space, right? Because if we're in that heightened time, we are constantly still looking for more threats. And so being able to minimize those means that we can start to get back to our baseline. Be genuine. If you're feeling really hurt by a situation, you can name that. It's important to weigh out whose feelings in that situation are quite important, or perhaps the most important. And frequently that is, it's the client's situation. And then we as staff can go back to our coworkers afterwards and really vent about, I am so frustrated. This is the 5th time we've had this issue. And that's a great time to kind of do a little bit of some care coordination work and think about maybe there's a program that works a little bit better for this client, or there's an approach. And Lisa Marie, I appreciate, has asked, does cultural sensitivity impact while de-escalating? Absolutely does. And I will be diving into that in just a little bit. I appreciate that. And I think validating and repeating what they're saying to you is important. You don't want to repeat too much, so we just sound like we don't have anything new to say. But wow, it really sounds like you feel super hurt in this situation because of X, Y, and Z. And then you can go back to, I can't do what you were asking, but, right? And that really allows for some safe venting. And frequently, a crisis doesn't happen in solo, right? Things can pop off as a result of, and if you have to split your attention, be really clear about it. So I am paying, I am very invested in what you're saying right now. I am also watching this over here. If I look away, it's only because I'm worried about their safety as well. But please go on and repeat back what you just heard from them. It's not the best practice, but if, we have to keep our heads on a swivel, especially if we have kind of, we're all stretched quite thin and we don't have very many folks on the floor. I say be genuine and real about it, right? Be authentic. Logic and reason, as I've been saying, kind of have to come after we calm down and our frontal cortex can be engaged again. And really using command language doesn't quite work. You need to, you should have, especially when we are in this super elevated emotional state, that really just feels like another direct attack. Also, likewise, I have never been able to calm down simply by somebody telling me to calm down. Asking what somebody needs to calm down is very different because you are assessing, you are asking, and you are inviting them to be an active participant in their own mediation of a crisis situation. And lastly, and I do think this actually gets to cultural sensitivity. So frequently we hear about, folks of color, righteous anger, totally justified anger being mistaken for aggression. Let's be very, very careful. Anger itself is not a problem. It is how that behavior is played out, right? Do not mistake anger for aggression. If somebody is being aggressive, do take appropriate precautions and address the situation properly, but don't mistake the one for the other. Okay, so just really quickly, this is a clinical or a therapeutic way to talk about what we all bring to that situation. Those personal histories, those current states. This is transference and countertransference. I just think that this might be a useful way to frame this for some folks. Transference, and I'm using some quotes from Yalom and Lesich's, their theory of practice in group psychotherapy. If folks do group work and you want to see a different kind of perspective, they're a little confrontational, but I think they've got some pretty good things to say about that. So the transference speaks about kind of that backpack of experiences, of histories, of triggers that our client will be carrying with them into any situation with an authority figure, which is us as service providers. Their experiences and attitudes get transferred onto us. Like I said, I end up being the face of every drop-in center or soup kitchen that anyone has ever had either good, bad, ugly, experience with. These are sometimes called false connections. I think Freud actually called them false connections, right? They are something to be aware of. We've all experienced them. We have to work through them and help folks understand that we are an individual, that we are representative of an organization, of a CAN, of a service provider landscape. However, we are not going to let them fall through the cracks, perhaps the way that they did before. We are not the same person that they were harmed by in the past. And they don't have to be that person who was kicked out of that program. They don't have to be that person that they have been, right? Now, countertransference is everything that we bring into the situation as service providers, right? And there's two kinds of that. There's objective and subjective. Objective is everything that we know. all of our experiences, our expertise and whatnot, that is great. We build off of what we know. That is useful, it has a purpose. However, subjective countertransference is kind of that personalized version of that. Every time that we've had a client not show up or yell at us or tell us that we're not helping them, that those idiosyncratic reactions that reflect more specifically on us as individuals, as opposed to our role as a service provider, right, that we carry into that. They mostly, stem from fears, wishes, and developmental gaps, but it's that moment where, a client is venting and says, no one ever helps me. And then we have that gut reaction of, you missed 3 appointments this week. How am I supposed to help you, right? That kind of subjective countertransference can re-escalate the situation. And I bring this up in order to address the kinds of self-awareness and self-regulation that is so important on our part to bring into the situation of de-escalation. Just kind of a clinical perspective here. And so I see in the chat. Yes, excellent. We had a staff member attend the motivational interviewing workshop and come back with amazing feedback. And we will be kind of linking in just a little bit some of those lessons to the de-escalation work. And Carmen brings up, if there's a conflict between 2 people, is it a good idea to have them both in the same place at the same time? I think that this depends very acutely on what the nature of the conflict was. I think that there are some really amazing restitutional practices that involve sitting folks down and having a rational conversation about what has gone on and how folks have felt wronged and what steps can be taken. I think that most importantly, when we have the fight, flight, freeze, fawn or flop response, we need to de-escalate the situation to a point where we can have that rational conversation before we can expect that folks are going to engage in that kind of conversation. There may very well be some situations where that might be different, but I think that kind of on whole, they might be able to be in the same space, but redirecting that energy towards calming and processing, I think, would be most important before they start to re-engage one another. Otherwise, it could kind of just go up and down and up and down. Excellent. Yes, Gloria, setting boundaries and expectations before you meet is very effective. Absolutely. If you don't have an idea of what the outcome will be, it's going to be the worst possible outcome, right? We plan for the best. We plan for the worst and we hope for the best. And if we don't have a clear guide of contracting what the expectations are, that most likely we will end up back in the same space. So as was mentioned, the kind of some of these other frameworks, the cultural humility, the motivational interviewing and whatnot, I really, when I work with our staff on training, we speak about these kinds of emergency tools in terms of, or rather these client engagement tools in terms of, are they an emergency toolbox or is this a bridge between different theory sets? And there in our drop-in center, we have a defibrillator and first aid kit in the corner. We have Narcan kits all around the room, but we have resources throughout the space. And the way that we end up looking at the built environment, how we set the space up for clients, ends up being that if we can address as many client needs as possible, right? If we can build as many bridges between our program, our clients, and all of the resources that are available in the area, there is a less likely chance that they are going to need an emergency intervention, right? If I make sure that our folks have eaten, that they have seen the medical team, that they are engaging with clinicians and social workers, psychiatrists, all of the CAN apparatus, the outreach workers, the less likelihood that they are going to have, they're going to need our staff to intervene in a crisis. It is in some ways wishful thinking, but I think that it's useful to think about a lot of these trainings that we all go to learn some of these skills. Do we only take it down off the shelf in case of emergency, or do we practice kind of the tools that we learn in our daily work, right? So throughout this conversation, we've kind of touched on, at least in part, each of these kind of concept areas. And as I said, I like to think of de-escalation and some of these other practices that were brought up as a bridge between what is frequently a very siloed approach to client engagement, right? If I decide that, if I attend a workshop on client-centered trauma-informed care, do I then decide that I'm only going to use trauma-informed client-centered care sometimes? Am I only going to see, my clients as humans sometimes? Hopefully not, right? And in the same way, there's a lot of these skills, these kind of practical applications that I hope that we can apply to our daily work. As I said, client-centered trauma-responsive care, remaining calm and not taking things personally, not bringing in that counter-transference, validating feelings and reorienting them. Again, feelings are valid. What we do with them is our responsibility. Respecting and allowing for free choice. If you do that thing that you really want to do, you are going to have to be kicked out of this program for at least a little while. Do you want to make that choice? Being able to contract with folks is important. And providing that safe space for folks to self-express, to be able to vent and really, get out what they are feeling in a safe environment, safe for you, safe for the client, and safe for everybody else. Because then if they can recognize and explore their options and consequences, they can make a new decision in the future. I think it's also really important to name power structures at play. Our folks are marginalized in so many different ways. They are dealing with an uphill battle in so many different ways. And sometimes just, being able to say, I truly see that. And myself, my lived experiences are different, but I can see how hard you are fighting to make it up that hill to housing. Like, I understand that you are tired, you are sick and tired of this, and you really just want to blow up sometimes. That really sucks. What can we do to give you a good outlet for that, right? And then we can segue into that, exploring options. And kind of lastly, knowing yourself and your limits. I think that's really, really important. We talk about self-care all the time, but understanding kind of the spectrum at which we are living at that moment. How much energy do I truly have when I'm walking into this crisis? If we have a staff person on who is not feeling great, they've just come back, they're maybe feeling a little sick, or they've had something going on in their personal lives, we check in just before we open our doors to the public. And knowing that that is the case, if as a supervisor, if I see a situation starting to evolve, possibly to the point of a incident where staff are going to have to interject, I will make sure that I am personally available, if possible, to support the staff members, knowing that they're not working at 100 today, right? I think that the more that we can communicate amongst ourselves, the more that we can advocate for one another as coworkers and supervisors, supervisees, but also the more that you exercise that self-awareness, the better it becomes. I know I can handle this situation, but I'm going to have to take off and, for 15 minutes, and I'm going to have to clear my head. Are there policies that actually allow you to do that in your workplace? Because if not, maybe we as service providers really need to be building in, I need to swap out. I just had somebody blow up at me. I know that my coworkers, when I was in a previous role at this organization, and I was very client facing. I was the only client facing staff person expected to de-escalate situations. I have been spit on. I have been, called all kinds of things. I've been threatened in all kinds of ways. And my coworkers had my back, where once the situation had been de-escalated, I knew that I could step out for a minute and breathe and self-regulate and come back within a reasonable amount of time, right? I only truly needed a couple of minutes, come back into the space, and then ease back into my work. If we know ourselves, we can also have a gauge on how to make the workplace less toxic and more healthy for ourselves, which means that it's going to be a healthier workplace for our clients as well. These 8 concepts are key to each one of these practice areas, which frequently are their own trainings, right? These are, I'm sure if we did everybody raise your hand if you've taken a training, if you utilize these modalities, these practices in your daily work, I'm sure that would be 90%, if not everyone, right? I think that it's important, though, depending on the scenario, each one of these might not be able to be communicated or discussed or truly processed. Each one of these is running through every kind of situation, every kind of piece of our work, every crisis, every crisis situation. And I think that this is important to kind of discuss, because culture humility challenges our biases and our assumptions about other folks' worldviews, how they process, what their experiences are, and it asks us to be humble in a situation, which is a great way to step into a crisis. Humbly assertive, right? Emotional intelligence promotes self-awareness, our self-regulation, and developing our gut level reactions and readings of a situation. How am I going to be most effective? And how am I going to self-regulate that countertransference? How am I not going to, I will take care of myself in a minute. How can I take care of this situation now? Harm reduction, we can take from that, meeting people where they're at. And it's also really aimed at reducing the negative impact of systemic harms. It's a really great way to think about all of that baggage that our folks have to trudge uphill with, right? And it's mostly focused on drug use and substance use, but I really think that those principles can be spread out, centering client choice and voice. You have choices here. You also have consequences and responsibilities, right? They're an active member. Motivational interviewing, as was mentioned before, it seeks to really build off of motivation's goals, gauging capacity for change, keeping open communication, and really requesting active participation from the client, right? And then de-escalation gives us these practical skills for handling when something pops off. And so we can kind of see how these all fit back together in a crisis situation. And if folks have a smartphone and you would like all of the materials, we're going to be going into a breakout room soon, that QR code will bring you to a page that has today's slideshow. It has the breakout room activity it has these handouts, and it also has a take-home kind of self-assessment if anybody would like to use those. This handout goes into further detail of each one of these practice areas, and also gives you a couple more resources to dive into if you would like. Now, how do we map that onto that interpersonal crisis, right? Well, we have on the left-hand side here, we've got our emotional intelligence. We're understanding and reading the situation and self-regulating, right? We know where we're at, we're reading where they're at. Our client is walking into the situation with their own motivations, goals, worldviews, and motivational interviewing helps us read that. Understanding the lenses through which, the ability through which, the language, the tone, and the modes of communication that someone might approach us with, and how ours is going to be read as a service provider and as a representative of our identities, is a culturally humble approach. And then harm reduction tends to look at the larger picture of not only the person to person interaction, but also let's talk about those systemic that systemic harm and the ways that we can kind of approach that. And right here in the middle, clearly we have these de-escalation techniques of how we relate to one another. So we have hit the 11. Oh, I apologize. Absolutely. In fact, there you go. So the QR code also tends to, and let me, as we're doing this, I will pull up and try as well. The QR code also will bring you to this sheet, which across the left-hand side up vertically goes through those different practice areas, and then across the top what those kind of key concepts are, and then how does that key concept relate to that modality, right? This is blurry. The link should be much clearer as a PDF. Does that work? Is that link working for everybody? Cool. Beautiful. I like to lay out the concepts in a couple of different manners. Some folks will learn in certain ways. Some folks will learn in others. These can also provide kind of a little bit of a prompt. I'm seeing that somebody's not, I am understanding that I walk into situations thank you, Amber. I walk into situations quite heated because I'm seeing my coworker being belittled, and I tend to get really defensive either about my clients or about my coworker or what have you. I really need to bring a little bit of emotional intelligence to that situation. So I might look at how do I stay calm and not take it personally, and then look at the emotional intelligence. Or how do I pull in the cultural humility? This is just another way to kind of think about how these concepts interact. So 11:05. I'm a little bit ahead of where I thought we would be. If we would like to jump out into breakout sessions now, we can. If there's a vote for a 5-minute break, we can do that as well. If anybody's feeling stirred to go use the restroom, we can also just say,
yes.
Tap in, tap out.
Yes.
Is that a 5-minute?
Yes.
Okay. Amber, is that good for you?
Yes, please.
That's fine. We'll take a quick break.
Excellent. Thank you all for advocating for your needs. Let's come back at 11:10.
It's actually 1,600. 1,600.
That wasn't for us. I muted her. So we'll take a quick break, and I will pause the recording. And when you want to come back, around 11.
11:11.
11:11.
Thank
Right.
you all. All right, welcome back, folks. So we have made it to about 11:15, a little bit ahead of what I thought, which gives us a little bit more time for some breakout room activity. Hopefully get to have a bit of conversation about what we've gone over so far. If folks are able to navigate over to that link that Amber dropped in the chat, it is the same as the QR code, whichever brings you there. There is a sheet of kind of case studies for discussion. So for the breakout room, I was thinking that we all could have kind of, it looks like we've got just shy of 80 folks, 10 rooms of 8. Sound good? Where we can kind of discuss, there is a list of 8 pre-written kind of case studies or situations that all kind of have a little ... ellipses at the end, where we're kind of asking just what are your considerations? What are you thinking about? Big picture ideas. What kind of areas of practice are you would you employ here? What are you thinking? What are you wondering about? And then also, what would you do in that space, in that situation? Folks are welcome to choose whatever they'd like, or if you have a personal experience that you would like to bring in and kind of workshop, that is, I entirely recommend that as well. What I would say is maybe don't spend too much longer than about 5 minutes reviewing kind of the case study itself, so that you can kind of get into the process, the group processing as it goes. Because I know that if we've been working with a client for a long time, you know all of the backstory, you know their mother's situation, their cousins. So maybe just kind of keep that part pretty quick and simple, and then kind of digest it all together. So does that sound good? Kind of breakout for, can we say maybe 20 minutes? We get back here exactly 20 minutes with, we will be sending out, Mark asked, how do we get into the breakout groups? The rooms assignment should pop up.
Yep.
Excellent. And maybe then we'll leave kind of the last little, I think that's about, put us right about 15 minutes to kind of debrief on some high level things that folks were thinking about. Maybe we delegate each group one person to come back and give a 1-minute response on what was spoken about.
Sounds good. All right, I'm about to open all the rooms now. So you all will get a message and you'll have to accept to join the room. Some people have not joined. Okay, so who's still here?
Could be folks still coming back from the bathroom break.
Maybe. I'm going to assign this person. They are not assigned. Okay, Angie, I just saw your message. You were not assigned to, for some reason. I'm going to assign you to a room.
Amber, does this record the breakout sessions as well?
It does not. It does not. Yeah. So I can make you, I'm going to make you a host, and therefore you can jump in the different breakout sessions and kind of see the conversations. But yeah, I wish it did record breakout sessions, but it doesn't. Let me see if I can make you a co-host. Okay, hold on. I'm not going to make you host yet. I need to move some people around real quick.
Order. Folks picked kind of all different prompts and perhaps brought in their own experiences as well. But if anybody feels particularly moved to do the first report back, please just go right ahead.
I can get you to jump in here down here like that.
We were group 2, I believe, room 2. We chose scenario number 8. Should I read it or just kind of do a synopsis?
Maybe just a quick synopsis and then kind of the points that you were thinking about.
All right. So scenario number 8 was basically a staff member came in to work late for the 3rd time. So the supervisor kind of pulled them. Well, when the staff member came in, they were, nonchalant about it. They were laughing with the clients and taking their sweet time. And so the supervisor pulled them aside and let them know that, this is the 3rd time that they are late for work. And, they really have to make sure that they're getting to work on time. And then a couple minutes later, a client walks by that same staff member and they accidentally bumped them, and the staff member just became really irate, started yelling at the client and basically unprofessional. So to de-escalate the situation, the group decided that as a supervisor, we would, like the scenario said, we would pull them aside and let them know that we do realize that this is the 3rd time that they're late. So a meeting has been scheduled to sit down and figure out what we can do to rectify the situation, because it's not fair to the rest of the staff that this one particular person keeps coming in late. As far as the staff being upset because they were spoken to when they came in and now they're, yelling at the clients and things, we would speak to them again and let them know. We'll give them, 10, 15 minutes to go outside, take a breather. But we do need them to get back to being focused on helping our clients. So if that works, we appreciate it. If it doesn't work, then our last option, would be to send that staff member home for the day, and to call up, a per diem staff or, a backup staff to come in. And that's just because the supervisor in the scenario had been at work for 10 hours already. So it's a little tiring to do another 8 hours. So we would ask if someone else can come in. But as far as this being the 3rd time that the client has, that the staff has been spoken to, we would definitely make sure we're keeping a paper trail, just in case the staff says, you never spoke to me about this before, or it's never been an issue. The supervisor can let them know this has been an issue. We've addressed it, and when they have their sit down meeting, you can show them all the times that it's been addressed, and you can do the next plan of action if it means, a suspension or a very stern write-up, whatever the agency's next plan is.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I'm hearing for like preparing, taking care of one another, self-regulation, and then concentrating on also the consequences, but you gave folks the space to self-regulate. Great stuff. So that was room 2. Why don't we just jump to 1, and maybe we can skip the description just if we have the number in front of us. Group 1 or room 1?
I don't even remember what room we were in.
Ooh.
To tell you the truth. What room was I
We
in?
were in 6.
We were 6.
Do we want to hear from room 6?
How did I know you was going to say that? Okay, where's our note taker?
All right, I got it.
Thank you.
So we did scenario number 1 where Johnny was up late. He's nocturnal. And he's playing music loudly on his phone. He's read the newspaper and he wants to discuss it. So our de-escalation techniques were to possibly bring Johnny to another room and chat with him. Maybe see if he needs to go outside for a walk. Maybe give him some chores to do. We also wanted to check his, make sure he's taking his meds, offer him headphones, and, model what an inside voice looks like so he's not speaking as loudly.
Excellent. Lots of options, but still keeping other folks' needs in mind. And I like the active participation in the program, like doing the chores and whatnot. It's a great way, not to advocate for unpaid labor, but it can be a great way for folks to expend energy, feel like they're helping out, feel like they're invested in their peers. They're supporting their peers, and they're also giving back to the program. So great stuff.
You can also talk about his newspaper too with those people, because that's what he wanted to do, was to talk.
Yep. Well, look at the motivations, yes,
Mhm.
and really, might be that he only needs a few moments, and then
There you go.
they'll get off. Yeah, excellent. All right, any other groups feeling like they want to call out some of what they spoke about?
I can go. So we were in breakout room 3, scenario 3. So a participant missed his spot. So I'm guessing it's a shelter bed. That's what we assumed. And because he left for a period of time and his spot was given up, and that's policy. So when he came back, getting upset with the person who now has his spot, and the person who has a spot getting upset with him. So as a staff member, we were a staff member, the group discussed like how to best address the situation. And one was like, I guess the identified one as the escalator was the person who now has the bed. And trying to address that individual and try to de-escalate with him. There also was ways of de-escalating the situation of seeing like what other things they could provide the person who now doesn't have a bed. If that's like, if we could just give him a chair to sit in so he has somewhere safe and dry to sleep sit that night, or providing him a blanket somehow to just like, see what we could provide, and also like de-escalate and like defuse the situation in a sense, even giving them snacks possibly. Also, there was talking about like the one who was identified as the aggressor, or the escalated individual, that like understanding where he's coming from and like maybe not like being accused of like taking someone's bed. especially if you're like in community with this other individual. But I think like the key point was just how to like, again, defuse the situation and have everybody like safe for that evening, or as safe as you can be at that moment, what you can even provide them. So again, blanket, food, somewhere safe to, if the shelter could allow them to sit there that night. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I apologize. I meant to put congregate in the description, but that's great. I like the no, but, and you're offering some other solutions. You're really, and the thinking about the competing needs in the room, while still validating, yeah, you're in community with one another, and you know that you're both expressing feelings around a direct basic need. That's great. I always love when you're able to give folks options. I can't do this, but what about this, this, and this? Like, because I still care about your needs. I just can't do that one thing right now. Thank you. How about anyone from group 1, 4, or 5?
I can talk for one. So we did the scenario where the guy wants to talk about the news. I guess we had different options. I recommended like a Rubik's Cube or some sort of activity for them to, stimulate the mind if that's what he wanted to do with his conversation about the news, or we give him a notebook to write down his thoughts. But either way, it was more to, accommodate for, something for him to do and distract him during the night times that's at least quiet. Definitely the headphones were a thought, and then making sure he was in another room.
Excellent. Awesome. Like giving someone an outlet to get that same energy out. Like the notebook is usually a great way to go as well. Yeah. Okay, I think we have time for just one more quick one. If somebody has a scenario that they haven't talked about, that we haven't talked about yet, and then we'll come back. I've got like one slide left, and we'll send you off into the rest of your day. That sounds good to folks.
Hi, I'm Ivy. I'll go. Let's see. Our scenario was scenario 10. Hold on, let me step up because I'm getting feedback. We had scenario 3 actually. Group 10. Basically, our client was loud. He was bragging about his new apartment, and everybody else was getting aggravated. So we said that we can pull the individual away to a more quiet area. And then we said we can congratulate him on his new apartment, also get him some help, maybe some AA, just so he won't potentially lose his apartment again. And the last thing we said was to validate his feelings regardless of the situation.
Excellent. So we're validating feelings, and yeah, they're frequently not very much cause for celebration in folks who are just surviving day to day, in their lives, and it's really important for us to celebrate those times. So that's great. And then figuring out options for the future. The one like little asterisk I might throw in there is that building the relationship over time might be, if this is a regular client that was in the situation, then that might be an invitation to start talking about substance use. But if this is a new person, I would really think about, is somebody thinking with the rational brain? Are they able to engage? But because this was like a longtime client, that I think that's totally great territory to go into. Think about motivations and where they want to be, because their next step is housed. So where they want to go beyond that. That's great stuff. Thank you all very much. Apologies to the groups that we haven't heard from. I just want to be cognizant of folks' time. And I have taken up so much of your day already. I appreciate you joining me. And I'm going to go back to sharing. Okay, can you all see? Excellent. All right. So just a quick word on upstream planning. So we got our friend here, the client, kind of going over the waterfall. How do we kind of rewind and think about our agency when they first walk in the door? How do we de-escalate by giving we talked about preparing folks for next steps and talking about accountability and people's competing needs. How do we, right from our first contact with a new client, how do we think about giving folks the information they need to make the decisions that we would personally like, that will go along best with our workflow? It'll mean that they have, it guarantees safety for everyone in this space, and also means that they're going to get possibly to their goals faster and in a more, expedited manner. And then kind of how are those rules and regulations shared? Who is a knowledge producer is really important to, as we're validating feelings, this isn't an exercise just to say, well, you feel this way, but I know the truth. Our feelings are truths. It just happens to be that the way that we act them out can be, fairly disingenuous. The way that our agency, Downtown Union Soup Kitchen, speaks about, lived expertise, really we like to put, folks in the driver's seat for their feedback and input for programs. And frequently folks will come back to us after a crisis and say, maybe we could think about it this way. I just saw the same thing happen 2 days in a row. What if we moved, these tables over here so that people don't keep bumping into one another? Great, they're an ally in the work, and they really get engaged. What language is being used, all of that kind of interpersonal stuff in the center of our diagrams earlier. But really, I just wanted to touch on what supports exist for staff members. There was some really great feedback about the supervisee and staff relationships scenarios, and just, do you have the time? Does your supervisor support you in the way where you can say, I need to swap out for 10? Like, I have found that for me personally, and for the people that I supervise, that can be key. Just taking that 5-10 minutes, knowing that is there if I need it later on, means that I am less stressed walking into a situation. And how is teamwork supported? When we were talking about those competing needs, we've got 2 folks experiencing crisis in the space. How do we split folks up, have that conversation, and then maybe come back together and have a more, calm, rationalized conversation? Can the clients identify with staff? How do we share space? And then how are these minor incidents that we can de-escalate? How are those addressed? Because folks will be looking to their past experience with your program, with your staff, with your coworkers, with you, when it comes time to, how do we handle a large crisis, right? Because they're looking for those kinds of cues of, I know that my voice is going to be heard. I don't need to escalate past a certain point. That is the hope, that we prepare in such a way that where folks feel heard and as an active a participant, and then therefore we can head things off of the past, but when stuff does get too big, at least I know that they trust that I am in some way going to be keeping everybody's thoughts, needs, and feelings in balance. Okay, on that same sheet with the QR code, there is a self-assessment exercise. This is simply, if folks would like, you can print it off. There's an example on the back, and one side of it really just goes into your comfort zone, your learning zone, and your danger zone. Comfort zone is where we operate every day. Learning zone is where we really start to practice new skills. It can be kind of uncomfortable. Danger zone is the place where we can go when we're handling some kind of really outsized crisis situation, but we don't want to stay in that for too long. And basically, this exercise means you plot each of those kinds of zones, and it can kind of identify for you where you might have some areas where you want to take new trainings in the future. For me personally, right over here, I could definitely use a lot more experience in compassionate reprimand. I am not good at saying that. I think it was brought up in one of the groups that as per our conversation, where the email that needs to go out, that paper trail, I hate coming down on my supervisees, but I really need to, in accountability and responsibility wise, I need to get better at that so I can support the team at being better at supporting our clients. But that exercise is there for you if folks would like to use it later. Thank you very much. There's the QR code again. If you guys want to use any of those materials, please feel free to. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope this was helpful.
Yes, thank you so much, Evan. I thought it was a great training, provided a lot of information. You all, this training was recorded. You have the QR code with the information in case you ever lose it. The slides as well as the handout and the recording will be available on our website. It's www.cceh.org. It will be in our webinar library. I will also be sending out a survey following this training. And I do see in the chat, there are people that's requesting a certificate. We usually do not, but if you all need a certificate, please, I'll write down your names. If you don't receive it from me and by a week or so, feel free to email me. Sometimes I do get distracted. I have a lot going on, but I'll provide you with a certificate for attending today. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Evan, again, once again, and you all have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.